We talked for about an hour and we didn't even talk about the format of her presentation. So she's full of knowledge about the New Mexico Cheesemakers Guild, and we're looking forward to this. Here you go, Lissa.
Here we go. Okay, so my name is Lissa Knudsen, and I am the president of the New Mexico Cheese Guild. And what is that, and how did it all start? So I am an academic. I am actually a PhD candidate at UNM in health communication of all things. I also am an instructor and have been for over 15 years now at CNM. I teach public speaking, interpersonal communication, and intercultural communication. But during COVID, like many of us, I had a wake-up call, and I'm like, what is my future? What do I really want to be doing, and how do I want to spend the rest of my life? So I decided to go back to the beginning, and I'm right across the street from Fat Pipe, this room that those of you that are here in person are here for. There's a little tiny cheese shop that opened up in October of 2022, and it's called the Mousehole Cheese Shop. And I walked in saying, you know, the last food service experience I had was 20 years ago. I worked in a little creperie, but I can tell a story because I've been an award-winning journalist. I have been an academic. I've been published in papers, and I am here because I really want to learn. And they, for all their wisdom and also just goodwill, they hired me. And they let me work in the cheese, at the cheese counter. And I had to remember how to sweep a restaurant and do all of those things, as well as start talking at the counter, which I was actually, that's my favorite part, was talking at the counter. One of the things about a small batch cheese shop is that we tell stories. We talk about where that cheese comes from, how it was made, whether or not the makers know the names of their cows or their goats, and whether or not those cows and goats are eating, you know, flowers, or if they're in, you know, large feedlots, that kind of thing. So at 48, I shifted from journalism and education to fulfill a lifelong dream of going into the cheese industry. I happen to come from California originally, and I love food a lot. So one of the first things I realized when I was at the counter is customers would come in and they would say, where are the local New Mexican cheeses? We didn't have any at all. And so I was like, I remember Old Windmill Dairy out in Moriarty. What happened to them? Well, they went out of business in 2020. Even though they had a lot of money to get started and they had a lot of wisdom and so much passion, it was impossible to stay in business. It cost them over $500,000, and they still went out of business due to all of the pressures and stressors. So then I found a little one up in Santa Cruz called Camino de Paz. They also weren't producing. They do still have some cheeses that they've now got up and running again, but it's not necessarily the most, you know, advanced or complex cheese. It's usually fairly fresh, and it's basically one of the many things that they do. So this is a picture I took when I was out at Old Windmill Dairy of one of their cows. I realized that local dairies are encountering resource constraints. They're encountering time, finance, and insufficient support with regard to like policies. And it's exhausting work to milk cows, to own animals, to know how to do the animal husbandry, to also take that milk, treat it right, have the expertise to make the cheese, and then to also age that cheese, wrap it, package it, distribute it, and have all of those pieces in one operation is not really sustainable in our state or in most places at this point. I also realized that there were some prohibitive policies. Many of the policies that exist at the federal, state, and local level are all conflicting. They seem to support those large operations, and they don't really make it possible for those small batch operations. One of the things we realized is in the state of New Mexico, raw milk is actually can be, you know, milked and produced, but it was legal in all of the state, but not the city of Albuquerque. So the Cheese Guild formed by bringing together a group of like-minded folks to work on making fluid raw milk legal in the state of New Mexico. I want to point out here, though, this is some de Smet raw milk that we were able to sell over at the Mousehole Cheese Shop. And after about 3 months, even though it's legal now, the environmental health department came in, red tagged us, even though they told us we didn't have to throw out the milk. They removed the red tag, but the red tag meant that we were published in the newspaper as being red tagged. And the red tag was because our printing was not a 1/2 inch tall, it was 3/4 of an inch tall. So you can see that there's policy issues that don't necessarily have to do with health and safety. It was such a a spook, honestly, for the owners of the Mousehole Cheese Shop that they stopped carrying the milk altogether. This is an example of the two different types of dairies that exist in New Mexico and across the country, and actually now across the world. We want to point out that there are different ways of making food and that local food systems are in fact unique. So over here, we call that a CAFO, or a large mega dairy that has sometimes up to 10,000 cows. They're all packed together. Over here, we have DeSmet Dairy, which is in Bosque Farms. You can see that there's space around the cows. They're using rotational regenerative livestock grazing. So those animals are less likely, the raw milk that is produced from an operation like this is usually higher quality, likely to be clean and tested many more times. If you know that you're going to have animals like this, you better pasteurize. That means to cook the milk, right? So if they're so close together and you're producing it with a really in-stage capitalist approach of just produce as much milk as possible, you're likely to need to be able to pasteurize. So just don't want to get too into the weeds on that specific policy, but it was something that our group really got behind. The other thing that we noticed is that cheese making is a vertical business model in most of the United States, where one individual has to do all of it. Maybe they have a partner. So maybe it's, two people, and they are caring for those animals, making the cheese, aging the cheese, packaging, and distributing the cheese. In Europe, in other places in Europe, they actually take this vertical model and they break it up. So there is the laitier in France, the person who runs the dairy farm, the fruitier, the person who makes the cheese, the affineur, the person who has the cheese cave and ages it and packages it and distributes it, and then finally the cheesemonger and the fromagier, right? So I thought, why can't the Cheese Guild help out with some of these local farmers and take some of those pieces, or at least offer to, which is why we're here today. We formed the New Mexico Cheese Guild. This happens to be the day that we signed the law with regard to raw milk. And this, you can see it's a collection of a different kind of, a whole bunch of different kinds of people. We have shop owners in there, we have farmers, we have dairy owners, we have politicians, right? There's multiple people, cheese makers. Our first goal was to get this policy changed. Our second goal was to get media advocacy. I actually have a background in my public health world and my journalism world and being able to understand how the media system works. And so we wanted to raise awareness, both about our organization, but also about what we're doing. And so we were able to get a journal article, The Land of Milk and Money. It turns out New Mexico is the 4th leading dairy producer in the entire nation, right? Who knew? Again, think those big farms. We have the largest cheese factory in probably the world out in Clovis. When it comes to small batch cheese making, though, we have almost none. We were able to just get little bits of different types of media down here. You can see TJ Trout on KKOB. We've been there 3 or 4 times. They like to bring us in, like they bring in like the wine guild and the beer guild. Up here last week, we were out teaching kids cheese science classes in public schools. We got some coverage there. And then of course, we got coverage for the policy change. We are a nonprofit. Normally nonprofits don't present here, right? So it might be a little unique to think, why is somebody who's a 501c3 charity nonprofit presenting to 1 Million Cups? Because we have a social enterprise business model. Our idea is to be able to make enough money to sustain our organization, to support our mission, which is to support local cheesemakers, and not rely always on soft money. We are eligible for grants, and we have been able to get a little bit of that, but where our goal is to be able to make enough money supporting this operation in a way that we're not dependent on that kind of money. So back to that vertical model, right? Our future plans, we were able to secure $200,000 in capital outlay from the state in order to do a cheese aging project. So we obtained this capital, and if any of you have ever worked with capital outlay, it comes with some restrictions. You have to have something that is not permanent. So because they need to be able to claw back that money if you go under, you have to make sure that, so it has to be mobile. And it can only be the capital. You can't use any of those resources to cover the costs of operating. Right now, we're an all volunteer organization, minus the subcontractors we use for the cheese classes, which we're able to use grant funding for. The financial feasibility of an aging facility, one of the reasons that I'm here today is to talk to you all about how we can make this work. We've got enough money to buy like a cargo container and to put in these types of shelves. It's really actually fairly low tech, What's not low tech though, is the temperature and humidity that's required to make cheese. So in talking to people already about, and I mean specifically you, Marlene, about the feasibility of this, we've realized it would probably make more sense for us to find an underground location or an existing basement so that we're not having to reduce the temperature and keep it at a constant temperature all the time. We'll still have to have some temperature regulation, but being able to maintain that temp and humidity will be easier if it's already using just the temperature of the earth. So we're looking for sustainability and climate control solutions. We're also looking to, navigating those funding restrictions are tricky. We don't technically own any property. So we've been looking for a location for this aging space. We definitely have goat dairies across the state that are eager and already ready. They haven't been able to take that leap and start making cheese, but they want to sell us their milk, and it's high quality and it's amazing. So we know we've got the input of the milk, but we're looking to be able to find a way to spend this money in the next year before the money rolls back. And maybe we can get an extension. So I say the next year or two. We also need to secure an off-and-on. And we can either train that up, bring in some experts to train local New Mexicans to be able to age cheese, or we need to attract an out-of-state, out-of-country off-and-on to come here at least to train us and to be here for a while. So those are some challenges we're looking for support and help in figuring out. Like I said, securing a location. We have been in talks with Roadrunner Food Bank. They are excited to work with us. They see that our mission is in line with their mission. They want to do more local things that have to do with sustainability, where we produce our own food here in New Mexico, especially as things get a little wacky with the food system and we want to become more reliable. That being said, they don't necessarily have an underground location. And then we're looking to cultivate investor relationships. And even though this is not a pitch, I need to improve my pitch. My background is in education, nonprofit development, public health, and journalism. And when I walk in to talk to people about money, I sometimes don't come across as credible. I come across as passionate, but I need to convince people, use the language of things like vertical, like business model, and be able to tell people exactly what it is that we're doing and that this is a viable project that actually is not only going to make money, but it's going to attract tourists to New Mexico. It's going to build pride in New Mexico. It's going to give locals more jobs, and it's a good idea. Okay, so in conclusion, what the Cheese Guild does, our goal is beyond better cheese. It's not just about the cheese. We're looking to cultivate a more resilient and vibrant local food system in New Mexico. We are also looking to empower local farmers and artisans who want to do this in a different way, that aren't looking at the maximum amount of production. They're looking about soil regeneration. They're looking at the air quality. They're looking at water quality. They're looking at animal care and humane animal treatment. They're looking at sustainability. We want to strengthen communities. We want to offer New Mexicans access to exceptionally local produced foods. We deserve to have food that is so delicious that if you were to transport it, it actually would lose quality. But if we make it right here, we can taste it and it'll be premium. And then mission driven by a commitment to economic development, enhanced quality of life, and sustainable practices. Second to last, collective nourishment, believing that connection, storytelling, and shared resources can nourish both bodies and the state's fabric. And finally, call to action, seeking insights and connections to realize that vision. So thank you so much for your attention and time. I believe I went a little long, but I would love to have some questions if that's possible.
Thank you very much. So anybody who has questions or suggestions, please get in line and point the microphone directly at your mouth, not like this because no one can hear you. And identify yourself and say who you're with and then do your question. So I'll demonstrate. Line up. I'm Paul Sutter with Equisy. So the suggestion I have is specifically on pitch deck because you say, oh, how do I pitch to money people? And I know that's a common problem here. And I'm just going through that myself. The book you want to read is Art of the Start by Guy Kawasaki. And he gives you the 10-slide deck that you're allowed to have. That's there's a support document I have for a send-ahead deck. So this is the new thing. No one talks to you until you send them a slide you meant that they click through and read. And I was taught, to speak in front of people with slides that don't have a lot of text on them. So you have to get out of that frame of mind. But I'm going through this myself. I also got excellent advice at the speed mentoring event. Someone who didn't know me sat down with me and spent a lot of time on my deck. And I might see her again on Friday, which I'm encouraging people to do. So talk to me afterwards about art of the start and how to do a send ahead deck and a pitch deck and speak their language. They don't want to hear yours.
Exactly. Thank you. Appreciate that. Anyone else have any questions?
Lined up over here.
Hello, my name is Liam Romero with Bath Bomb World. My main question to you is I saw on your writing at the end, it said opting out of end stage capitalism. And I might have missed that in your pitch, so that's my fault. But I want to know what that looks like.
I love that you asked that question, and I'm not at all surprised that somebody of your generation and age is the person who asked that, because I think that in my generation, we were really afraid to even question capitalism as if that made us not very business wise. However, end stage capitalism to me is this idea of being disconnected. So whether it's a corporation that's making decisions that you maybe are a shareholder of, but you don't know what kind of decisions they're making, or it's again that CAFO, that concentrated animal feeding operation, where the goal there is in order to make enough money to sustain that operation, they're having to make decisions that are not in the best interest of the animals, the air, the water, or the people who work for them. So holding on to those values and actually doing this in a way that maybe isn't going to make as much money. We're a nonprofit. We are not a for-profit operation. Our goal is to make money to reinvest back into our mission and to maybe be able to have labor that and people who work there that can make a living wage. But the goal is not to make millions of dollars and then retire like happy and go off to, I don't know, some other place and like sit on a beach, right? So the goal is just literally to reinvest into the community.
Yeah, so much. That's
Thanks.
a great answer.
Morning, my name's Franklin. I operate a private foundation. Regarding the real estate, the location that you need, one idea is to reach out to the Albuquerque Board of Realtors. They have their executive director. They also have a community involvement team. So you need a specialized location, but there are also some food. There's some warehouses in the downtown area that may have been former bases for food storage that are already refrigerated.
Thank you. That sounds like an incredible opportunity. And if there's anyone online as well who has connections to anything like that, that just getting the word out there, I think sounds like that would be very helpful.
Hi, I'm Marlene Brown. I teach solar electric at CNN. I have a couple suggestions. So you already understand a model that works. In Europe, they make cheese. You can get it everywhere. It's reasonably priced. There's tons of kinds of it. Why not use that model here? Either cultivate it domestically, do some kind of T-sheet exchanges. If you bring somebody in solar, I wanted to learn how to do something. Instead of sending somebody to learn and come and teach, we just brought the person locally. We were able to raise enough money by inviting others, because you never know who wants to learn. And we raised enough money to bring him locally here. So that could be something you can do. So, I mean, use the models that work. Why reinvent the wheel when you don't need to? Use your energy somewhere else. And the other thing is maybe create incentives to have folks do some challenges, do something so that you get more people involved.
One of the things that they do sometimes at cheese festivals is like a cheesemonger competition, and that gets people to step up their cheesemonger game. So we could do something like that, or a competition of like a judging of cheeses and have local cheesemakers produce cheese that they compete to do the best job, and that would probably elevate their skill as well. It's a great idea. Thank you.
Morning, I'm JJ with Johnson Brothers Tiny Farm. I'm actually a former student of yours.
Are you really?
I am. Yeah, I took your public speaking.
Well, and look at how great you're doing.
So my question for you was regarding the aging facility. You said that you have the plans set up for a container,
Yes.
right? Would it be possible to then bury said container, or does that have to be mobile for the
That's-
grant?
No, absolutely not. It's interesting what actually qualifies for capital outlay. So if it's like a floor that you put in and you could technically tear it out, that counts. So I think that burying it into the ground, as long as there's a way to unbury it, would also allow. And those restrictions, they eventually wear off, right? Every year you've got depreciation of the value, and at some point they no longer own it, and then they usually just gift it to you. So as long as we stay in business and we're able to get it up and running and it serves the community by bringing people here, we can do that. So I think we should be able to bury it. I say that without a lot of engineering.
Absolutely. So we live down in Bosque Farms,
Oh, nice.
within a
Just met.
short walk of Desmet. And so I was wondering, I know that Bosque Farms in particular is looking for, they have land that they're looking for a use for. And I wonder if that might be a good connection to make, to say, we have a dairy. We need a place to have this aging facility, and that would benefit the community as well as just being a great use of that land.
The quality of milk would be so much better if it traveled such a short distance. There's so many reasons why that's a great idea. My initial thought when you were first talking, I was like, oh, we can't do that because our fiscal sponsor is the city of Albuquerque and we need to stay within the city of Albuquerque's limits. However, because you asked that question, it made me realize there's got to be a way to go back to the state and change it because that's still part of the state and the funding is originally from the state. So why not have Bosque, the city council that Erica sits on, become the fiscal sponsor instead of the city of Albuquerque? And maybe that's going to be some red tape, but if it makes more sense for the end product, maybe that's the way to go.
I'll give you my card. I'd love to talk to you more.
Yeah, for sure. Tiny farm sounds like ideologically we're in line too.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Barbara Dawson with Purple Mulch. And I think we're all looking at how do we store this stuff? I made cashew cheese one time for a friend with a cooler in my refrigerator. I kept throwing ice into to keep it at the right temperature. Said it was the best cheese, vegan cheese you'd ever had. So I live in Corrales, and I'm also thinking in Corrales, a lot of people will lease their land to vineyards to put stuff on top of the ground. And I'm thinking, how much room do you need? Could you dig a hole in my yard? And put a cover on it, create a root cellar or whatever it is that you need. How much space are you needing for the storage?
Yes, great question. So imagine, the cargo containers that are on railroad tracks, not the long ones, but the short ones. So like 20 feet and then that height and that width. That's the space. Honestly, when we went to Roadrunner Food Bank, we said it may be 3 parking spots and there's the extra space around it. So it's not that big of a space. You'd be surprised how much cheese you can age and in such a, because there's so much rotation as well. You're pulling it out as you're adding more. That would work.
So do you have funding to dig the hole?
I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know if the restrictions of capital outlay would provide for the preparation of a space for the capital, or if that's also considered like operational. So I would have to look into that and find out. Again, Corrales is not technically in the city of Albuquerque, so we would have to go back to the drawing board a little bit with the restrictions on that funding. Okay, let me know. Okay, thank you. Can I take that as an offer to use your yard?
Yes,
Okay,
thank
thank you.
you.
That's incredible.
We're on that as well.
You want to offer to use your space as well?
We would.
Okay, I love 1 million cups. Here you go.
Good morning. Thanks for sharing all that. I'm thinking about how you can get your money as a nonprofit. And one thing that I've seen that seems to go really well for nonprofits is some community events, like you mentioned. And I have some ideas about that. Maybe partnering up with some local wineries, I think wine and cheese. Get people nice and sauced and ask for their money. Well,
Yeah.
Green chili cheeseburgers could be
Oh my God, there's so
a
many.
huge draw. Yeah, there's just so many ways. But I think partnering up with some other local businesses that love cheese. That could go really well for you. Have you done that in the past? Do you have any local partners that you'd be interested in collaborating with?
Thank you for that question. First off, excellent idea. I think that the landscape and environment with regard to our breweries and our wineries is so ripe to be paired with cheese because they just go together like wine and cheese, right? However, yes, we've done this. We worked with Santa Fe Spirits last year and we did a whiskey and cheese pairing. We've done 2 or 3 French cheese tastings. We've got a cheese making class that's going to be at the New Bareilles Kitchen at Street Food Institute on June 1st. And that's going to be class where we're going to make queso fresco, panela, and then crema. And we're really excited about those. One of our limitations right now is not having any paid staff. And so having the staffing to learn the curriculum, design the curriculum, and then offer those has been a limitation. So I need to figure out how to get more money to pay somebody to take the time to do this, as opposed to me working 3 jobs and trying to do it in the middle of the night. Yeah.
Volunteers.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. Okay, thanks.
So I'm Kenneth Hingham from Kenneth Hingham Consulting. I do cybersecurity, but I'm actually here or mentioning to you that we have 11 acres on the other side of the mountains in Bernalillo County, but not in the city.
Okay.
That's another place where you could potentially put it because there's basically nothing out there right now.
Yeah.
We might have to get with a solar person to get solar running out there for your power. I mean, there is power there, but we don't have any on our property. So that would be another option.
One of the limitations that I neglected to mention, even if it is not in the city of Albuquerque, it can't be on private property because it's public money. It's considered taking tax dollars and giving it to a private entity. There are ways around that. There is specific grants that allow for that, but you have to prove economic development. And at this point, I now need to make a better pitch to convince them that this is going to create jobs. So I hear that.
Will Counts, Branding Titans, Digital Marketing. First question, why do you do what you do?
I love that question. And I was trying to have a better story to start what I was going to talk about today, just telling about my passion. I do what I do because I care very much about food that is delicious, but I also care very much about animal treatment. My father was a veterinarian and I have like 2 dogs and a passel of chickens and 3 cats right now. I care very much about animals. I showed sheep and I showed horses. I also care about the air and the environment. As a journalist, I wrote a story about the ozone level in Albuquerque and across New Mexico. And the American Lung Association gave us an F grade for the amount of ozone that we have in the air right now. And part of that is because of some of these massive dairies. But when you spread those animals out, the dilution makes it so that it doesn't have the chemical reaction and we don't have that ozone that affects our lungs. So I care about the future, I care about our community, and I care about.
Next question, why do you do what you do for you without repeating?
Yeah. So I do what I do because I was burnt out as a teacher. It was hard to teach in this environment. People are using AI to write all of their papers and it's a different world and they don't necessarily see the connection. I'm getting older and I feel like the distance between our generations is going greater and it's hard work. So I was burning out in that environment and I was looking for something that would make me feel happy again. And cheese makes people happy. So when I'm a cheesemonger and I hand somebody a piece of cheese and they didn't expect it to be that amazing and their eyes light up and they say, wow, I get the biggest rush of this. I've made somebody else feel joy. And that's pretty great in a world that's sometimes pretty not full of joy.
Did you guys feel that? Yeah. It's awesome. So, one of the reasons why I ask the questions the way I do is, and you touched on it earlier about presenting yourself for funding. And you touched on your vision statement and your mission statement, but you don't have a why statement. So take what you just recorded, because that's recorded, and write your why statement. And with people who are going to be investing in your business or being Paul, what's the word? It's not an investor, but a person who's vested in you, like a vendor or a customer. If they get that spark that I just saw when you were talking about why for you, you're gonna make a connection that they'll resonate with. It'll be subjective. There's no recipe for it other than being authentic and like really knowing why you're doing something. Okay, shift to your container. When you go to bury it,
Yes.
I had this vision with cinder blocks on the floor and the walls, and then something over the top because yeah, insulation, but it also transmits the cool. And then keeps the container from like rusting out anywhere, things like that.
Right.
Okay.
Great ideas. We actually are working with a pretty reputable and trusted designer who has some experience in designing these sort of mobile cheese aging spaces. They call them the cheese box. So we do have a lot of faith in the actual like math behind the engineering. But I think that they have less experience in New Mexico because they're not from here. So what you just said reminded me of Adobe, and I'm like, that makes sense here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions? Thank you.
All right.
So we do have two final questions for you. First of all, what can this community do for you?
What can this community do that they haven't already done?
Yeah, that's not hard today.
Right? Again, help me find that location, continue to help me hone my pitch. And yeah, just continue to be supportive because as you said, like when my stepdad's like, why are you not making a living yet? You know, it'd be really nice to say that there's a vision here and that it's gonna work out that way.
Well, we're all for better relations with our families that don't understand why we left security for adventure. And finally, speaking of adventure, red or green?
Green 100%.
All right.
I love the tang.
All right, and you'll advise us on the correct cheeses to pair with green. Okay, thank you very much.
And honestly, it's always unique. Thank you.